What's up guys, my name is Ivan Valdovinos and I create videos on graduate school life and advice. So if you are new here, consider subscribing. In today's video, we are going to look at my graduate school curriculum vitae in order for you to be able to construct your own resume or curriculum vitae. Currently we are in application season, so you should be already thinking about your personal statement or statement of purpose or both, your resume or curriculum vitae. You should have already asked for your letters of recommendation and opened up the application. That way you can strategize on how to tackle that application. If you haven't watched my previous videos, I already shared my statement of purpose for how I got into Harvard Graduate School of Education, as well as basic overview tips on tackling the master's application process, specifically for the Harvard master's program in education. So go check those out if you haven't done so already. Before I share my curriculum vitae, I want to give you some tips. That way you're able to use those and strategize so you can write your own CV or resume. So let's begin. Tip number 1, decide if you are going to write a resume or curriculum vitae / CV. This is important because depending on your field, they're either going to want a short, concise resume or more of a longer storytelling of your experiences in a CV. So for me, I knew that I lacked, the test scores, the GREs. I didn't do so well in those. And my resume was really subpar. I had a 3.49, which meant that, I was at the cusp of that 3.5 that they're seeking. But I didn't think I was competitive enough to get into an Ivy League school. So I applied to 3 Ivy League schools. I applied to Harvard University, Columbia University, and the University of Pennsylvania, all in the realm of education policy, higher education. And so I ended up getting into 2, so Harvard and Columbia. And what I did for all these schools was I sent them a 5-page CV. I wanted to tell them that I was committed to issues of education and tackling those challenges for underrepresented students. So I submitted a 5-page CV where I included a lot of my work experience. At that point, it wasn't full-time work experience. It was more of work study jobs as well as internships that I did in the summer and so forth. And as well as my ambassador program that I was in. I was also part of other clubs where I held leadership positions. So I put those under and clustered them under work experience. I wanted to show them that I was doing a lot of activities at my university and my undergrad institution, and that I was, working towards helping students access college and be successful in college, which was part of my statement of purpose that I wrote, as well as my whole mission for getting a master's of education at Harvard or Columbia or UPenn. And so I decided to put all my experiences that I had done within the 4 years out of the school in my CV. I also wrote about my research experience. So I had 2. I had one that I was doing at the institution, which was through a program that helps minority students learn about research, construct research, and then publish and present their research. And so I wrote about that, or I put that in my CV, which you'll see in a bit. I also was accepted into a competitive national research program at the University of Arizona, which I also put in there in my CV. And there I described what I did for the summer and my mentor I put in there who was my mentor, as well as what research skills I gained. I also wrote about my international experience. So I studied abroad twice. I went to Japan for 1 summer, and then I did a study abroad program in Madrid, Spain. So I put those in there because I wanted to show that I was looking at education issues in different perspectives, not just the US, but globally. And so I wrote that in there. I put that I was studying the language and culture in Madrid, and then that I went to Japan to develop a summer program for US military children. And so I put that in my CV. I also put that I was bilingual, so I had a section for languages, and because I am fluent in Spanish, so I put that in there. I don't, just in retrospect, I don't think that's a good idea. So once we look at my CV, I'm gonna kind of pinpoint some of the areas where I think that I should have improved because I don't think my CV is perfect. Not looking back at it, it's very sloppy. Yeah. So tip number one is make sure you decide on if you want to do a CV or a resume. And you should decide this based on your field. What does your field want from you? And also, what does the application say? Because the application can strictly tell you, we want a 2-page resume. And so you're going to want to stick to that 2-page resume. If it's more open-ended and they don't have a word limit or a page limit, I would think about it really strategically and then tackle it that way. So for me, for example, mine was really open-ended. They didn't have a minimum. And so I decided to go full force and submit a 5-page CV, although I understood that they were going to look at the whole 5 pages. And so, yeah, that's tip number one. Tip number two, formatting matters. So like I mentioned previously, I sent in a 5-page CV and I put all of my experiences on there. And the way that I was able to, or I guess backtrack. So like I mentioned before, committee members are not going to read word for word every part of your resume or CV. So you want to make sure that your formatting is clean and very easy to read, and you bold things that you want to pop out. So that's what I did with my CV. So I, clustered different experiences with different headings. So for example, I had a heading that said graduate higher education experience. And then I had research experience as another heading. And so this was telling the reader what to expect in these sections. So you want to make sure that your formatting is clean, easy to read, and describes your experiences within that section. Tip number 3, this goes in line with the formatting. Decide what you're going to name each of your headings. Be strategic about this, because it can definitely help the reader decipher your resume, and it can definitely help you highlight your strengths. So think about your experiences and then jot those down on a piece of paper and try to cluster them where they fit nicely. For example, like I mentioned before, I had a section that I titled International Education Experience. This meant that the reader was going to see only international experiences in this section. And that's what I wrote about in those sections. I also spoke about like publications that I did, even though they were in small journals. I still wrote those down, and publications, that heading really told them like what to expect to see in that section. I also had a section of conferences, and this was me presenting at conferences. So it, strictly showed that they were going to be able to look at conferences that I either presented at or attended. So definitely think about the headings, and you can make the headings whatever you really want. I'll share some more tips once we get right into my CV. My last tip is to tailor your CV or resume to fit your niche. So what do I mean by this? So when I was applying for these top Ivy League schools for my master's program, I had a niche. So I wanted to make sure that the committee knew that I was committed to issues of equity and access for higher education for minority students and other students who are marginalized and underrepresented in this field. I also wanted them to know that I was invested in family engagement practices as they related to Latino families and students. I also wanted them to know that I was committed to researching and learning more and advancing the educational opportunities for Latino males. And so I wanted to make sure that my resume, my CV, fit my niche. So I put in there a bunch of experiences that related to college access and retention and graduation rates. And this was from my personal experiences as an ambassador for my College of Arts and Sciences, as well as my admissions work with the Office of Admission at the institution that I went to, as well as my research agenda, which was my research projects, and my international experience, because my Japan experience where I developed a summer camp for military kids. All this encompass, providing college access opportunities for students in different areas of the globe, but also on my campus. So I definitely made sure that my resume CV fit my niche and my story, and it backed up my statement of purpose, my letters of recommendation, and everything I wanted them to know about me and my mission to transform educational spaces for marginalized students. All right, let's look right into my CV and we will dive more into more tips, and then I will let you know like what I thought worked well and what didn't work well. All right, guys, so let's go right into my CV that I submitted to all of my master's programs when I was applying back in 2015, and I got it into the University of Arizona, University of Washington, Harvard University, and Columbia University. And so let's dive into what it looks like, what my successful CV looked like when I submitted it. So as you can tell at the beginning, I put my name. I did put under here, I did have like my email, my phone number, and my address, but obviously I don't want to put this on YouTube. And so make sure that you do put that information down there. I would suggest that you just put your student email from your institution, as well as maybe like your LinkedIn account and then your phone number. And that's what I would include at the bottom of your name. So make it big, not this big. Mine's 36 right now. Like make it smaller, make it like a 24 size or something. So at the beginning, I decided to put my education. So as you can tell right now, it looks very messy. That's one thing that I would change if I were to redo this again, because there's a bunch of things jumbled up here, and I feel like committee members are not gonna, you know, be able to just skim and read and see what I actually got my education in. So as you can tell, I got 2 bachelor's degrees, which I put up here. I put this in italicized just because I wanted it to be up front, because it is a good distinction that my college provides. So I passed my junior writing portfolio with distinction, which meant that I was in the top 10% of students in writing in my junior class. And the reason why I wanted to put this and highlight this in the beginning of my CV was because in graduate school, it's very reading and writing intensive. So I wanted to make sure that the committee knew that I was a strong writer and that I was going to be able to succeed at their institution with my writing skills. And so this kind of shows that I do have a strong writing background, and because I got this distinction. I also put in here that I was pursuing a teacher certification for the state of Washington, and that I was expected to get that on May 15th once I graduated. And so that was also tied into my, the education space and why I wanted to be a teacher and some of the issues that I saw in public education in the state of Washington. Then, like I mentioned earlier, I talked about my international education experience. So I put the school that I went to in Madrid and what I studied, as well as my internship in Japan. And I wanted to show them that I was looking at education at a global context, not just a domestic context. My next section that I talked about was graduate presentation experience, and what I put in here was my research experiences. So I spoke about my summer research institute program that I attended at the University of Arizona, as well as this program that I was in that was called the McNair Achievement Program, which helps minority students and first generation college students learn about the research process, and they help us publish our research as well as attend conferences. And so I titled that graduate presentation experience because I wanted to show them that, I knew how to conduct research at a graduate level, because both of these experiences exposed me to like a graduate level experience in research. And the McNair program, actually, I had to take 2 classes that were graduate classes as part of the curriculum. So I titled it that way. The committee members were able to see that I was ready for graduate school and that I was already taking classes and experiences that were graduate level. And then when you write like your explanations down here, make sure that you start it with a strong verb. I'm gonna link the Harvard Law School resume portal down below in the description section. That way you're able to see like a whole menu of strong verbs. So so make sure that you have a strong verb, and then that you're descriptive and you describe exactly what you did. Don't leave it very broad, be detailed. The next section that I have is publications. So like I mentioned before, my publications were not in big journals. They were really in the journals that the programs that I was in produced at the end of the summer. And so I put those small journals because I wanted to let them know that I was writing some good research articles and that they were being published, although they were in small journals. I wanted to show the committee that, I was thinking about publishing articles and that I already had minimal experience with this, and that's why I wrote publications there. The next section is conferences attended / presentations. So as you can tell, I went to 4 conferences that I presented my research at. And 3 of those were at the university, or 3 of these, the first 3 were the same poster, but at different conferences. And so I put that in there because I wanted to show them that I was comfortable with public speaking, or at least that I was getting experience with public speaking, and that I was presenting my work to multiple people in the field, not just, at my institution or with the programs that I was with, that I was sharing my knowledge, nationally. And then I also included that the first one here is that I went to an undergraduate National Collegiate Research Conference at Harvard University. So I wanted to make sure that Harvard knew that I already had ties to Harvard in some way, and that I was, speaking to Harvard faculty and other students, and that I was really invested in learning about the institution, but also that I wanted to go there. The next section that I wrote was the higher education experience section. So in here, I put all of my work study jobs, all of my summer internships, all of my internships that were during the school year, and as well as like really anything that where I held a leadership position or some type of experience. So I'm going to quickly go through these because I have a lot. So the first one is the College of Arts and Sciences Ambassador Program, where I was able to provide my college perspective to prospective students and families. And through this work, I also designed a mock career fair that I developed and moved forward for my institution. So I created this mock career fair for my institution, and it's still running to this day. And one of my letters of rec writers actually wrote about that experience because I was working alongside her as my advisor, and she wrote about like my leadership experience based on this mock career fair that I developed and moved forward for our college. The other experience that I wrote was Kappa Delta Pi International Art Society and Education. This kind of goes back to my mission of, education and moving and transforming educational spaces. And so I was the treasurer for this organization, and that's why I put it in here, because it was closely tied to education. The next one was I was a English tutor, and so I wanted to show the committee that I was invested in helping, in this case, migrant students succeed with their English or the academic papers. And also I was an English major, and I wanted to be an English language arts teacher. And so this also tied in with my mission to help students learn how to write at the college level so they can be successful in college, and obviously that's going to help them graduate. The next thing I talked about is more in detail my Japan experience with the Camp Adventure Youth Services Counselor internship, where I developed a summer camp for 20 to 30 children at the U.S. Naval Base in Sasebo, Japan. I also talked about like my student ambassador experience at the Office of Admissions and how I provided bilingual information and tours to numerous families and students, as well as just general personal experience at a predominantly white institution. And so I spoke about that in my CV. I also did work with the Migrant Students Foundation internship, and I was the Education and Scholarships intern. So again, this ties back to my mission of providing access opportunities for, in this case, migrant students. Early on in my undergraduate career, I worked at the Children's Center, so a daycare, and I worked in the kindergarten room, so I was helping kindergartners with their daily routines. I was reading to them. I was, leading some small group activities. I also worked for the Writing Center, so this again ties in with my mission to help college or students in high school write at the college level so they can be successful once they get to college. Early on again, I volunteered at this middle school at an after-school academic program, and then I also created with a group of other peers a leadership conference for migrant students. So as you can tell, a bunch of my higher education experiences were really tied to like who I am. So I come from a seasonal migrant farm worker background, so I wanted to make sure that I highlighted that and that I was working on issues and developing programming for this certain population of students. I also wanted to make sure that they understood that I was invested in educational work. And so as you can tell, all of my experiences here were education related. Let's see. And then the last thing, like I mentioned, is the languages. I think, and like I mentioned, like I speak fluent Spanish, and I can read it and write it in, because it's my native language. But honestly, I would take this off and think of something different to add. But overall, I think that I did a good job of explaining who I was, what I was passionate about, what my work said about me, and that I was invested in transforming education. And the ways that I did that was by being involved and also research. But if I can go back, some of the changes I would make is make it a little bit more cleaner. Like this is way too mushy here, like it's just it can get confusing, or it's not easy to read. I would also make a separate heading that is titled International Education Experience. That way it clearly highlights my international experiences. I think I would also, let's see, add maybe different titles, like different headings, and cluster my other experiences in different ways. So I might have a section that's titled more like migrant education experiences, and I would cluster like all of my migrant, seasonal migrant, farm worker experiences in that section. So I would think about creative ways in which you can make these headings, that way they pop and they're interesting, because at this point these committee members have seen a lot and lots and lots and lots, hundreds of resumes and CVs that might look the same all the time. So you want to make sure that you stand out by having different headings that are going to pop and that are going to make you stand out and be competitive applicant. All right, so hopefully this helped with you constructing your resume or CV. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I've been getting a bunch of DMs and emails and comments from you guys, and I really appreciate those, because obviously it's helping me grow my channel, but also I like helping students out. So definitely DM me, email me, and ask me these questions, preferably in the comment section, because it does help with the algorithm. But if not, I totally understand, and I will give you as much feedback as possible, especially now that it's application season. Stay tuned for my next videos. I am gonna try to produce more videos than usual. That way you're able to get more content and be better prepared to submit competitive applications. If you liked today's video, please give it a like and subscribe. Because it is application season, let me know what other videos you want me to produce in the comment section down below. My plan is to produce more videos than usual. That way you are prepared to submit a competitive application to whatever school you want to get into. I will see you in the next video.